right, for the record, I challenged every other panel today to a game of flag football. My panel against theirs. Kellyanne Conway got back. She accepted because she's on a winning streak, so she's feeling good. Everybody else declined.
I'm the kicker.
I'm the kicker. I'll be the coach. But I think we got everyone covered. We appreciate you guys coming. Little known fact: in my younger, hungrier days, I ran a company, and one of our products was a magazine and a community for professional athletes called the Players Club, designed to figure out how professional athletes who have as we know, an average maybe of a 3-year professional window to make money, how they make and keep their money. This is an important panel. There are a lot of parallels for the entire education system, so I'm excited to talk about it. But maybe to kick off, not the metaphors coming up in the next half hour. Chip, tell us about PAC. Is it, you like PAC or PAC? What's your
PAC? We
PAC.
go by PAC.
Yes.
Pro Athlete Community. I got the branding on right here.
Show it off. Let's talk about PAC and let's get into it.
Yeah, we got to get into it. These
for sure.
Excellent men. But so Pro Athlete Community, education and mentoring for pro athletes. This is my 4th company in education, so I would tell you it's an honor, most importantly, to be here with all of you. So critical issue, one that I'm super passionate about. I've done K-12. I ran Hooked on Phonics, which you probably heard of. My last company became one of the largest online education companies in the world. So why do I start there is, I started that company at 37 with 2 kids, and it completely changed my life. And the fact that people would tell these excellent men and soon women that when they're done playing pro sports at whatever age it might be, at 28 or 26, or in some cases very, very young because they blew out their knee and didn't recover from it, that they're retired at 30 is not only ludicrous, but the grit, rigor, and intelligence it takes to do what these men did on the field is so much more than just pure athletic ability, and it's directly transferable. So the question is, how do you create the right context for them to thrive, relentlessly pursuing what is next in their future? And so these 3 guys are doing incredibly well off the field and are truly role models in different ways. That's part of the reason that I was so honored that they joined us today, because what they're actually doing is a model for guys. But I will tell you, plenty of the guys that come into PAC are not in a good place. People don't realize how big of a problem set this is, that the potential and the power of pro athletes, once they are really galvanized towards their future, is incredible what they can accomplish. But unfortunately, it's a pretty brutal life, and when the lights go off and you're done coming out of the tunnel, as they would say, many men struggle tremendously. And it's not just the notion that you hear about pro athletes financially struggling when they're done. People know the 30 for 30 Broke series on ESPN. It's not just that. It's much deeper. Like, this room is about human development. And in their world, it's the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. It takes an incredible amount to get there. But when you get there, you are solely focused intensely on one particular thing in a way that the viewing public, I'm very passionate about athletics, doesn't realize. So I guess I would say to you, we're honored to have now about 500 guys in our community. Started the company 2.5 years ago, and it's really, to me, I think, whenever I'm done on this planet, I think we'll look back in my life and realize this was the most important thing that I've ever done. It's great.
Love it. So why don't we hear from the PAC community members? Maybe we just go in order, introduce yourselves, and kind of talk about what, how you're plugging in post-career, and then we'll get into, some deep talk in terms of how this applies to the education system. So maybe we'll start at the end here.
How you doing, y'all? I'm glad to be here. I'm Jelani Jenkins. I actually grew up in the area from the DMV, went to Our Lady of Good Counsel High School. I got involved in the PAC community not too long ago, and it was definitely a response to a lot of the challenges that I went through when I transitioned out of the NFL. So I played 5 years in the NFL, 4 with the Dolphins, 1 with the Texans and Raiders. And the biggest challenge for me was figuring out who I wanted to be outside of sports. And initially when I left the game, I was really excited. I had this whole just vision of life, beyond the game. You're in this box for so long, focused for so long, and then you get an opportunity. It's like, oh, I got a whole new world out there for me. So I was excited about it, but one of the biggest challenges I ran into was not knowing how to, cultivate that inner athlete that still really existed within me. And so I had, a major wake-up moment about a year outside of retirement. My wife, she had a Polaroid camera. She took a picture of me, and I don't know if y'all ever been in a situation where you've seen yourself in the mirror or seen yourself, a reflection of yourself, and didn't know who you were looking at. But it was one of those situations where she took a picture of me. I was playing Call of Duty. I had like this big old cannabis bong in front of me. Like I didn't really like what I was seeing, y'all. You know, I was playing good in the game, but I had my headphones on, and I was like, what's going on here? And at the time when she took the picture, she didn't mean any harm. She had just gotten this new camera, but she took the picture, and I looked at the picture, and when I saw it, I didn't like what I saw, and I didn't know who I saw. And that was kind of the wake-up moment for me to start my self-discovery journey to try to figure out who was that person outside of the game, because I hadn't gone through that process yet. And so, like Chip mentioned, so many athletes are going through this exact same thing. In fact, one of the things I'm very passionate about is supporting athletes via wellness and integrating wellness with optimal performance, sustained success, working with high performers, athletes, the like. And a lot of it has to do with some of the situations I went through. And I'll say one last thing is I'm very passionate about it because, like you said, athletes retiring at 30 years old and stuff like that. I had 4 former athletes who I played with, all by the age of 32, who all passed away in the last 3 years, the same way, being found on the floor, you know, by themselves, isolated. And so it's an isolating thing that we go through that not many people can relate to because we're seen as gladiators. It's hard for individuals to kind of see the human inside of the pads, if you will. And so that's what I'm really passionate about. That's why I'm here. And yeah, I'm excited.
I'm Latavius Murray, 11-year vet. I'm going to say current free agent because I'm hoping to get on a team still, so I'm going to speak it. But
the game in Baltimore in about 4 hours.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
you know,
So,
if Derrick Henry goes down, we know if you have to leave, we understand.
Yeah, so played for 6 different teams, one being Baltimore, the Raiders, New Orleans, Minnesota, Buffalo, and Denver. But met Chip a few years back. I was getting my MBA while playing. And I'll say, I know that's kind of rare, but for me, I've been through some injuries, some adversity, and for me, I had to look at, okay, if football was over, what would I do? And that's when I took, you know, my education very serious at that point to go back to school and get my MBA. And so at the time, he was running 2U program, which was the platform that housed that online education. And so got involved with PAC this past year in NYC, mainly because I'm going to be going through that transition phase. And it's just really important for, as he mentioned, guys to figure out who they are off the field. I don't think it's talked about enough, and I think that's what has to happen. Talking to guys that has transitioned out, you know, educate guys on how hard it's going to be. But I think a community like PAC is doing that, and so just grateful to be a part of it.
Hey, everybody. My name is Sam Barrington, 5-year NFL vet, currently president of Skylimit Crane and Rigging, founder of PPIC, Pro Players in Construction. And so I think beyond anything, it's important to recognize that guys transition from sports with different identities, right? And for me, when we were developing my company, PPIC, that advocates for former athletes, help them find careers in construction, we decided to categorize these guys in really 3 different categories. You got the guy that everybody knows about who made a ton of money. You got the guy who may have gotten that second contract, made some money, but he needs to develop an interest on what he does next. And then you got guys that didn't really make money at all, and we need to find ways to get this guy an opportunity so he can feed his family immediately. And so in saying that, when I got involved with PAC or met Chip, it was because another guy who pretty much left the game with the same professional identity as me, where it's like, made a little bit of money, but I still needed to find and jump into an interest immediately, right? And so for me, it happened very quickly. I also encourage guys, when you leave the game of football, immediately get started with something so you don't have that, I call it habit decay, right? Because when you play the game of football, one of the things that dictates your success after the game is how can you take the skill sets that you learned in the game of football and apply them to another area or subject in life. And so for me, all the things that drove me towards success during the game of football, hard work, precision, understanding of time, the application of teamwork, you know, emotional intelligence, I was really high up on those things at the time, really efficient with them, and I just immediately took those and put them into my current business, and it afforded me success. And so, again, one of the guys with the same professional identity as we're already, 4 or 5 years into our careers despite only being 5-6 years retired. And he introduced me to Chip, and I found out that some of the things that I was working on and what PAC is, had immediate synergy. And so within that, although, the initial conversation was about partnership and me, being an asset to PAC, I've had an opportunity to learn tremendously. And I'll say 2 more things. We know that there's a direct correlation between a male's happiness and his ability to provide for his family. And so what we see is when you provide guys an opportunity to provide for their family, even if it's not the same way they were able to in the NFL, you immediately see a different level of joy in that guy. And I think that's the thing that PAC brings a lot of guys that you can't necessarily quantify. And then the other component is I've had an opportunity to learn a lot from Chip and what PAC is doing. And getting those guys back and us being able to have that locker room experience has been one of the most beautiful things. And unfortunately, I'm sorry that some of you guys don't know what I mean by locker room experience, but it's where we feel most comfortable, and that's one of the things that the pro athlete community has done.
All right, I've got an easier question and a harder question. Which one do you guys want first?
Harder.
Hard.
Yeah, let's go for
All
it.
right,
Like
well,
athlete.
pro athlete.
athletes.
All right, so I think part of the reason a lot of hires like people who have sports background is because there's a discipline. It's not unlike why a lot of people like hiring veterans. You've shown that you can practice, you can achieve, you have discipline, et cetera, et cetera. But with professional athletes, the success, of course, is being incredibly dedicated and good at something, at what you do physically, and historically, and you guys are the aberration, but historically, the education is secondary to how many hours you're on the field and being successful. So how do you guys see that we get your cohorts, up to speed? What have you seen work? And a lot of the problems that you're talking about and the guys we find on the floor are the ones who couldn't make the jump. So what would you guys see as a way to bridge that?
I mean, I think the biggest thing with athletes, we're used to having to learn playbooks. We have coaching changes where new playbooks come in, new language comes in. And I think a big strength for a lot of athletes is coachability and the ability to learn quickly and to be really focused and locked in to be able to grasp a concept. And you combine that with being in a culture and a team environment where everyone around you wants you to win, which is what that locker room feeling feels like, which is what PAC does really well, is putting us back in a community where it feels like everybody in there wants you to win. You're able to excel in that way. So the lack of experience or education in the business world doesn't really slow any of us down. It actually fires us up. It's a challenge, and the coachability aspect of it is how we learn quickly and are able to move fast in that world.
Now, Latavius, you went back to school while you were playing, which
Incredible,
is
right?
super unusual. Again, what can we? And again, I think they're parallel. What I love about this panel is there are parallels to all the educators here in terms of what they do with kids who are on different paths. Based on your experience, how can that kind of culture? How can that proliferate? How can we turn to people who that wouldn't be their first instinct and show them the path forward?
Yeah, I think it's up to veterans, older players to communicate with the guys that are coming in, right? Because if I communicate with you that, I had these injuries, I went through all these things, okay, it hit me to go back to school and think about my future outside of football. I don't think enough of us is doing that. And then also, we need that same energy from the players who may not ever have to think about life outside of football, right? We need your Tom Brady's, we need your Justin Jeffersons to preach the same message. I know they can't see it at the time, but hey, you guys aren't going to be like me. You may not have the same career that I have. And if we're being honest, 90% of the NFL is the makeup of the guys who will have to work after they're done playing. So I think it just needs to be a discussion. It needs to be more talked about. And I think, when me going back to school, I definitely make sure I share that message with all the players that I've been in contact with.
And you got an answer. You want the easy? We want to switch to the easier question. Your choice.
Well, you can give me both.
All right. No,
yeah, I'm a competitor. You know?
The incredible advantage that pro athletes have coming out is you're well known. People want, you have opportunities because they want to give you. Again, sometimes they're bad opportunities. Sometimes they want to take advantage of your fame and take advantage of maybe you haven't done, business before. But you see a lot of people. Let's say you see Ronnie Lott or Joe Montana or baseball players like Jeter and A-Rod and who are use their fame to create tremendous wealth. And you guys are on that path clearly. What are the lessons you've taken from wins and losses in terms of being able to leverage what you've been able to achieve and take it to that kind of tycoon level?
Yeah, I think. Well, we're talking about.
Tell
business.
us about Skylar McCrane and rigging because
Yeah,
there's a lot of I see a lot of
being so humble. Like that's the largest construction crane company in Western Africa. Is that not true?
Yes.
Am I your PR man now?
Yeah, no problem. I'll do it for
incredible.
you too. Yeah. I think in the thing about football, again, we talked about a transferable skill set. You're going to have bad days in football, right? And we always talk about it's not about what happens to you, it's how you respond. When you talk about that in the business world, it's like you're going to have things happen that you need to pivot from. And so in football, it's more about resiliency and hard work and effort and grit. In business, it's those same things, but it's also the application of strategy and being ready for those things to happen and being ready to pivot when those things happen. You talked about how do we create healthy work environments and kind of promote and get our colleagues to a place where they're ready to go out in the workforce as well. I don't think enough can be said about laying the foundation while these guys are amateurs. And I saw it myself. I tell my friends all the time, when I was in 12th grade, if a college coach called me while I was in class, I would just answer my phone in the middle of class because I'm like, I don't care. I don't give a damn. I'm going to college. And we can't allow amateur athletes to not be held accountable for who they need to be once the game is over. And I think a lot of times we set a false reality for those guys, and it's like the whole big man on campus mentality, where once I got 30, 40 scholarship offers, the teachers started to treat me different. And it's like, I get that it's one of those things, it's inevitable, but we got to keep these guys held accountable so when they go in the real world, they have a social and a professional foundation. And I think guys fail to transition from sports is because they don't really have a professional foundation. Nobody ever held them accountable as a professional. And I'm here to tell you, as I got out into sales and business development for my own company, I found out that me playing in the NFL only held weight in certain rooms. These guys
probably not much in Ghana, right?
Well, in Ghana, it's a lot different. It's like people marvel over you, but it's not enough to get it done. It'll get you in rooms, but what happens when you're at the table? We talk about getting a seat at the table. What good is it being at the table if you don't know a difference from a salad knife and a steak knife? You get what I'm saying?
And the urgency also, Sam, is that you talk about big man on campus, but still, even those high school stars, 1% of them, 0.1% of them will become pro athletes. So also, they're skipping, the advantages they have in terms of maybe they're getting a scholarship or maybe they're getting an opportunity to go to a good school, but they're not taking advantage of that. That's the real risk. I mean, you guys, at least, got to go all the way and then leverage from there.
Yeah, it's getting an early value system established for all athletes, right? And like Chip said, because of the nature of the game, we have to overindulge the sport, so there's not enough, mental capacity for other things. But creating that value system early on, right, and prioritizing that student-athlete piece, the student part, then when you transition from the game, you can, you're ready to do something worthwhile outside of the game of sport.
If I could add one thing, I think another big thing that a lot of athletes experience is we are kind of lulled to sleep in a way of programming from the organization about who's going to come speak to us, the type of resource that they're going to bring into the locker room. And I know when I first left the game, it was kind of a weird concept for me to reach out to people because I'm just so used to everything coming into the locker room. So we got to hold athletes accountable to getting out of their comfort zone. So if you're at at the University of Florida, where I went to school, like there are a whole bunch of very successful people who are fans of you, and you can reach out to them. You can go out of the way to have lunch with the people that you want to meet and get to know people around the locker room. But it takes getting out of your comfort zone and not just expecting things to always come to you. And I think that's one of the biggest things I would have liked to have done when I was playing, is to like network in my city, in Miami, like network more, get out of my comfort zone, not just expect the people I need to meet to come to me.
Important.
One example that I think you'll all be able to relate to inside a pack that's fascinating. Our member recruitment team is all former players, and they're watching right now, so what's up, guys? And what's amazing about it is, like, you want to talk about a skill that they bring to the table that is so hard. When I was running 2U, we got up to about 4,000 employees. Receiving and giving feedback, training new managers to receive and give feedback was so exceptionally difficult. And what's amazing about the players that come out is the feedback is immediate and urgent. They want it right now. They don't want to know what they did well, because the world that they lived in was so intense. And so you apply that exposure to the non-athletic world. You know, one of our favorite lines, exposure breeds expansion. And it's just very clear that once that context is created from where you've come from, it's pretty remarkable. And it shows up like inside a pack all the time.
We're about to hit the fourth quarter of this panel. We have a lot of amazing education innovators and entrepreneurs here. We've been talking, and lunchtime we were talking about this, and we saw on Tuesday, what happens at the ballot box when young men are being left behind. That's true. In school, boys are being left behind. Black boys are especially falling behind. You guys have successfully navigated to the highest heights, talking to a group that can really move the needle here. What can we do for boys and specifically black boys with our education system based on your successful experiences?
Yeah. So I say this with the utmost ignorance for educational reform and policy, right? But if we were to incentivize local school districts who perform higher on student-teacher congruency from a race and gender standpoint, I think that would really improve the experience for young black men, okay? If a young black male can go in a classroom and see a teacher, and those school systems are being incentivized for making sure that black males are at a teacher's desk, now these black males have someone who understands them, someone who can communicate with them, and someone who could usher them into a place of success and helping them understand how to navigate the world. And unfortunately, I had a lot of great teachers, Caucasian males, Caucasian women, didn't really matter. But the relationship between someone who looks like you, especially with young black men, young black and brown males, it's an invaluable relationship.
It's a very good point. Cornell, you out there? We have somebody out there, Cornell, who's doing that exactly. I will connect you guys. I will connect you guys after. We have somebody, and maybe we can make a connection here.
And Tay, make sure you tell them about the John Diaz Center.
So, for me, I think a community around our young kids is very important. And so me starting this community center was, a near and dear to my heart. Named it after my best friend who passed away in 2016. But growing up, he and I attended community centers together, Boys and Girls Clubs, and it was just the diversity the acceptance there that I felt that I think really impacted my life and really made a difference. And so it's always important for me to try to give back those same experiences to young kids, and I think those are one of the things that can make an impact. And I'm a father also, and so I do believe a big part of that can be done at home in raising my kids as well. So,
Latavius, I know you take that foundation seriously, which we appreciate. There are a lot of athletes and celebrities who have foundations. They don't do very much. They're there to kind of make.
I will tell you, I went to his.
No, I understand that.
It blew my mind.
Correct.
It's really incredible what you're doing in Syracuse.
So kudos. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would say programs centered around wellness is super important. I have a program that I hold back in my old high school at Our Lady of Good Counsel High School, and it's a program for the student athletes, and it's centered around wellness initiatives as well as performance. But when I have these conversations with them, there's so many things happening at home. There's so many complexities with the recruitment process with NIL. I mean, these athletes, these like 15-year-olds are getting offered hundreds of thousands of dollars. Their parents are involved in those decisions. There's pressure, all type of different things are happening. And so giving them the tools to be able to navigate those stressful situations so that they can be their best, just walking to school, just going into school and getting an education, but also being able to perform at a high level, I think that's really a big gap. And everything that y'all were saying about like having the representation in the administration, like these are all things that I think can push the needle forward.
Yeah, all right, 4 minutes left, so maybe a minute each. It's kind of sudden death here. We, again, trying to take advantage of this amazing room of innovators. What would you say if you could, again, we have a new administration coming in. We have a lot of amazing out-of-the-box thinkers here. If you could each come up with something that would help boys and girls, people who are not going to become professional athletes, but should be exposed to sports, because we're seeing a lot of cutbacks in sports. What worked for you, or what did you see? And maybe we can go, Mr. Jelani, and then come all the way in. What have you seen that works that you think could benefit every student?
Back to wellness is a big one, but I would say, a lot of athletes have a lot of challenges going through life when they feel like their sport is over. When they don't play professionally, they kind of leave this athlete identity behind. So I think just like communities and initiatives that really create a sense of pride in being an athlete, a lifelong athlete, because that really is a superpower, and all the things we learn in those little league football, basketball, just those experiences that we have growing up in these team environments are huge. And so I don't think that has to stop just because your sport stops. I think the identity of an athlete is important. So having communities that help to uplift that is powerful.
We always talk about teamwork. It's probably harder if you were never on a team when you get out of school.
I have to come back to, again, a community center, and only so if kids aren't outside as much, I feel like we used to growing up. And me and my friend Coop here was just talking about that. And even sometimes I fall guilty of it. But just being outside or having a safe place to go to and get together other than being at home playing a video game, it's just different now. And so if we can provide a safe place that they can get out of the house and go to and be around other kids, I just think that changes the game. And so and then when you mention team sports, all those things are provided and all those things you have access to in these type of facilities. And so team sports have obviously played a huge impact in all our lives, but the life lessons from team sports, I truly believe has made me the man that I am.
And there are already so many studies, and even though we're still maybe only 10 plus years into the kind of the smartphone for kids with smartphone era, you see not just physical health, but mental health go up when the kids stop looking down and they actually go and play with their friends after school.
Well, I do recognize that financial resources and the educational system, depending on where you are, what region, what zip code, state that you're in, are sometimes limited. And so I think when you take colleges or, some of those D1 universities or any NFL teams, people who do sports for a living and, are in the business of sports, partnering with school systems would be a huge asset, right, to those student athletes, because now they can see, a pathway or a journey in front of them as opposed to imagining what it will potentially be like. While I was an athlete, anytime I had an opportunity to go out and visit a school, I took it, because I know sometimes unless those kids see you and can touch you, sometimes it feels unreal. So I think it happens through partnership.
I'll take my 30 seconds to tell this room how important what you're doing is.
Sure.
Pell Grant kid, first-generation college student. My parents are amazing, but I didn't grow up with a ton of resources, and I went to GW right down the street, completely changed my life. Impossible to overstate. Got here, had never seen snow, been out of Florida twice in my life. Education's so powerful, and I think no matter how old, I'm 53 now, I'm learning every day. Every day you're learning. So what I love about the last panel is the notion of pathways. Even inside a pack, what's amazing with these successful men, you talked about the third of the guys that come in that need pro players in construction. We're building these pathways for the guys into, real estate, entrepreneurship, sales, construction, even aviation, interestingly. So I just think the notion of giving people the opportunity for internships and pathway programs is so important. So
Truth spoken, great way to end. I think one other thing that for those who've made it all the way, like this group, I want to thank you for being role models, because there's so many negative role models. There's so much, and there's so much attention when things go south, and there's not enough attention to people who are quietly excelling. So thank you all for being the role models that you are. We appreciate your time.